Hello, you're watching James. My name's James, you're watching me, and I am talking about watches. Well, welcome to a first impressions video to a watch from MT&W Watches, a watch company that I had never heard about, but a watch that looked rather familiar to me. And it looked rather familiar to me because it seems to be quite a popular sort of looking watch or a style of watch. It's a style of watch that is coming out in sort of mainstream brands, micro brands, as well as Aliexpress brands. So when they reached out to me, I wasn't 100% convinced that I wanted to grab hold of this watch. However, when I looked into it a little bit deeper, I thought, wow, you know what? That's actually slightly different to the other watches that look like this. And it's also priced really well. And the specifications actually look good. So you know what? I want to see that watch. So thank you so much to MT&W Watches for sending this watch out to me free of charge. I do not have to send it back. However, that is not going to change my opinions about this watch. I'm making a first impressions on my actual first impressions of this watch. But because it is a sponsored video, I will be leaving a link to the MT&W website down below. If you are interested in this particular watch or another one of their watches, well, that link will take you straight through to their website. Again, thank you so much for reaching out to me and supplying this watch free of charge, because it is quite an interesting watch. I do like the little spin that they've put on this design to make it a little bit different, to make it possibly something that is rather interesting. At least I find it rather interesting. And guys, if you haven't subscribed to the channel, I'd really appreciate it if you just click on that little subscribe button. And if you guys are interested in buying this particular one, as I mentioned, I will leave a link to the website below. And just for your reference, just so you know how much this is worth, so you can keep that in mind as I show you this watch, it is selling for $248 US. Yes, I'm talking US dollars today because that is what is on the website. And at that price, well, what I do when I sort of look at watches, I sort of ask myself a question, well, what else could I get in that sort of range of watches for that same sort of money? And it's one of the reasons why I actually said yes to MT&W to receive this watch free of charge. It's because I compared this watch with a few of the others that are sort of in that sort of similar range. And I think with the specs, with the slight differences, with this look, with the case size as well, I think it actually might be well worth the money. Hence why I said yes. Yes, it's obviously a free watch for me, so that's fantastic. However, that does not mean I always say yes to watches just because they're free. They still actually have to interest me. They still have to be worthwhile featuring on this channel. And I actually want to wear them. If I don't want to wear them, well, I'm going to say no to companies. So I've actually said yes, so obviously I want to wear this watch. So in a first impressions style video, let's flip the camera around now and check out this MT&W vintage Panda style watch. Well, first impressions of my first MT&W watch. And I have to say there's three things that stood out to me straight away. Let's firstly talk about the first thing. It's the packaging. This came like this. This is like a hard case. It's quite a big case. It actually reminds me a lot of a sunglasses case, and in fact it actually does fit my sunglasses, so I get the feel that it actually might be a sunglasses case that they're actually using as their outer packaging, which I'm actually quite happy with and quite surprised about and quite interested in, because firstly, keeps the watch safe. Secondly, I'm now going to have a nice travel case for my sunglasses, because you're not actually going to have to need it when you do travel with this watch, because it comes with a secondary travel pouch. This one here has a little interesting sort of a locking mechanism. Slide your watch in there, close it up, slide that in your pocket. Now, if you are a viewer of perhaps some other content creators, perhaps one of the best known content creators on YouTube about watches, you may recognize this general style of sort of packaging, this sort of on the fly or on the go travel case, something you can slip into your pocket, have a second watch. It's something that has quite interested me. I think it's something that he put together or he thought about and is sort of being homaged or looked at or being reused by this company. I'm perfectly happy with that. It's lovely to have that now in my collection. So that is the first thing that really stood out to me, is what actually comes with the watch. But obviously we are here to see the watch, and this is the one that I have chosen. There are a few different options available. I went for this Panda vintage chronograph style. Comes on paper with some good dimensions, some good sort of specifications. It's powered by the Seiko VK63. Only has a mineral crystal, but I think that sort of suits this sort of more sort of vintage style. And at this sort of price, I'm certainly okay with that. So what's the second thing out of those three that stood out to me? Well, unfortunately, it's the strap. The strap is not particularly good. I've looked at a couple of reviews of this watch and they're talking about the strap being good. Let me tell you right now, it's not particularly good. It looks good, it suits it, it's a nice color, but it really reminds me of those sort of Aliexpress special cheapy sort of straps. Has a real foam feel to it. If it says genuine leather, yeah, it says genuine leather. Well, that genuine leather is just that piece of black, that little thin piece of black. Yeah, that's genuine leather. The rest of it is not. Now, for me, that's not a particular negative, because when I'm buying watches, I'm not always going to like the strap choices they've chosen. So to have a cheaper strap on it means it has not taken away from the packaging as well as the watch, and I'm happy to then swap it out, and I will be swapping it out. So it's worth noting that. Not really a big negative, just worth noting that it's not a particularly great strap. And the third thing that stood out to me is the sort of signature of this brand, of this particular watch, which is what they're going for. They are really wanting to add something a little bit different to this watch, because this sort of style of watch, powered by this Seiko movement, well, it's quite a bit of an in trend at the moment. There are lots of different watches from different locations, from big name brands, Aliexpress brands, micro brands that are pushing out watches that look somewhat similar to this. But the thing that really makes this one stand out, and the thing that they are trying to do a little bit differently, is the texture of the dial, or the type of dial. They are trying to make this watch, or at least putting into this watch, something that sort of makes it feel vintage, not just the style of the watch, but actually apply something to that dial that makes it individual and vintage looking. So you can see that there is some really interesting sort of look to that dial. They're using some sort of effect to try and sort of age that dial. So there's no photina. It's not really like the photina style loom that we're talking about, the actual dial itself. And it actually quite sort of comes through quite well. When you look at sort of watches from the sort of 40s and 50s and 60s, sometimes if they've had a bit of a hard life and they've had a lot of wear and tear and been in the sun, you do see that sort of background sort of dial does start to go a bit yellow and containing some sort of really interesting marks on it. And this is sort of replicating that. And it stands out because it is slightly different for me. And it stands out because it's actually done fairly well. I'm actually quite okay with it and quite impressed by it. But those three things aside, because those were the things that stood out to me straight away, overall, it's actually a nice watch. It feels quite nice. It has a fairly nice weight to it. It has a very sort of similar dimensions to what we sort of expect in this sort of range of watches. It's all sort of polished. Fairly simple case back with the MT&W logo. Let's just talk about that logo for a second, because I really like it. Really well designed. It's just a very cool sort of shield look with the MT&W inside there. I do like it. Being the VK63 movement, we do have a sort of countdown, obviously. Being a quartz movement, it's going to be reliable. Being a Seiko movement, it's going to be reliable. Quick flick back. I think we've got a 24-hour dial here, sub-second hand, and the 60-minute timer. Tachymeter, that doesn't move. That's all sort of solid. I do notice that there is a nice little bit of an insert and curve in towards the lugs, which is nice. The polishing itself, it seems okay. I'm not going to say it's the best I've seen, but I'm certainly not going to say it's bad. I think it looks perfectly fine. Very sort of nice. It's just overall quite a nice watch, a little bit different and presented very, very well in that sort of packaging. So yeah, and at this sort of price that they're sort of putting it out there, $248 US. I think that's actually relatively reasonable, especially when I ask myself the question, what else could I get for that sort of price? What else can I get in that sort of this sort of style? Because when we look at Aliexpress watches or bigger brand watches that are doing this more sort of vintage style, sort of racing chronography type of style, that's sort of actually a nice sort of medium sort of price. Certainly not asking too much for this one. So how does it look on wrist? Well, let's put the strap aside because, as I said, it's not my favorite, but it is, I guess, a strap that will start to feel a little bit better once you wear it a little bit more. But I think it actually looks really nice. I actually really quite like this sort of aged patina dial. I think it's a really interesting, quirky sort of feature of the watch, and it really adds to it. And the size and the sort of case shape, the dimensions, yeah, fits really nice to my 6 3/4 inch wrist. It is a watch that I'm actually quite looking forward to wearing slightly longer term. So I will be wearing that. I'll be getting another strap for it, something nice, maybe a nice dark brown leather, and I'll probably be then featuring that in the full review of this one. So stick around for that full review. Thank you again to MT&W for supplying this watch for this review. I do certainly appreciate that. It certainly really assists and helps with me and this smaller channel. So thank you so much. Thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to have this one on wrist and share with you guys. So let's now finish up, and I hope to see you in the next video and in the future when I do the full review of this one. Thanks again for watching. See you soon.